Welcome to the Repurpose Your Purpose podcast. I'm Aurora Meneghello, and this is my podcast about everything related to having a good time at work, enjoying what you do. I really wanted to create a space where I can invite people to talk about their stories of career transformations, coaching, leadership, anything that will help you feel inspired and confident about doing work you love. Today, I am so excited to talk to Alex Potter. I'm going to say a little bit about Alex in just 1 second, but first, thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for participating.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
So let me start with your bio so people get a little bit of an idea of who you are, okay? All right, here we go. Alex Potter coaches leaders, visionaries, entrepreneurs, and creatives who have dedicated their lives to service and impact. His expertise comes from serving as a leader, whether it was when he was building and leading impactful organizations or creating his own businesses. Alex has over 30 years of management and leadership development experience. He has founded and co founded multiple successful and award winning organizations, serving tens of thousands of individuals and families, built numerous financially sustainable projects, and helped hundreds of adults and students realize their leadership potential. He won the Do Something Brick Award as one of nine from over 400 applicants nationwide, which is a national award sponsored by Rolling Stone magazine and MTV recognizing young leaders under the age of 30. Two of the organizations he founded and led as executive director won the award for Best Organization in Chicago, sponsored by five of Chicago's main philanthropic foundations. When he's not coaching, Alex enjoys spending time with his partner and soulmate Melissa, who he's been married to for over 30 years, and their dog Sunny. All right. Well, let me say, first of all, that I know from experience Alex coaching. I've experienced it myself and it's amazing. Alex is one of the best coaches I've ever had the pleasure. Actually, I'm gonna take that back. He's the best coach I've ever had the pleasure to work with, and his coaching made a tremendous impact in my own practice and also for me as a person. So today, when I asked you to join me, I really had in mind we could have a conversation about what makes for impactful coaching, transformative coaching, and also the importance of coaching for leaders. What do you say? Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, by the way, thanks for the lovely introduction. And I would also add that I have had the same experience with your coaching and also consider you to be the best coach. And yeah, so it's going to be exciting to explore coaching um, through our personal experience of doing work with one another.
All right, this is gonna be a very unique episode of this podcast. All right, so let me start with my first question for you, okay? Um, So we already talked a little bit. I think we mentioned that we experience each other's coaching, and one of the things that we share is that we really practice deep transformative coaching, which is sometimes a little bit difficult to explain to people, right? So can you share a little bit what has been your experience with truly effective coaching? Can you sort of give us a little bit of an idea what really made the difference, both as a client and as a coach yourself?
Yeah. So I would point to a couple of distinctions or approaches or elements that I've found to be crucial for transformative and impactful coaching. And those would include that number one, coaching provides a space of unconditional love and acceptance, which means that there's no judgment or blame. And I have to say, so you're that's something you're particularly good at. When I'm at the receiving end of your coaching, right? Because in the world we live, there's just so much judgment, so much conditioning, so much messaging about how we're not good enough, how we need to get better, how we need to improve. And when we try to create improvements in our life or career, we often start from that place of deficit, of lack and void, and we're just not good enough. And in coaching invites us into a space where we can just let go of all the self-judgment, the self-blame, the self-shame, and experience love and acceptance, and that allows us to start from a place of freedom and possibility and love. And it also allows us to experience a deep sense of self-love, right, which we don't often give ourselves. And from that place, a lot of healing and deep transformation can happen because we're connected to source. We're connected to the source of our own well-being, our own power. So I think a big piece, right? Creating a space of unconditional love and acceptance. I would also say that coaching provides a space where wisdom and insight can emerge, um, which means that we get to see something that we have not, that we often have not seen before. Because like when we try to create change or we try to achieve a goal with our thinking, with our mind, the mind relies on information that we've gathered from the day we were born until the now. Whereas deep inner wisdom comes from being connected to the field of infinite potentiality and possibility. And coaching, right, provides a space where we can connect to the field of possibility to receive wisdom and insight. And it allows us to see things that we never knew what was possible, or see things about how we been getting in our own way or staying stuck in some limiting stories or limiting self-beliefs. And once we see the limitations we have imposed on us, we then can create change and let them go. So that's been a big experience for me, is that we can't really change what we can't see first, right? We sometimes know that something is causing stuckness and limitation, but if we don't know what it is, we don't know what to do and how to release the barrier. And so coaching can really help us to access our wisdom and to see what we weren't able to see before.
So this is something that I really, let me put it this way, before experiencing as a coachee, your coaching, I had only experienced the kind of coaching where I had to think a lot about plans. I had to analyze things a lot. I had to be in a push, push, push kind of mode, right? And I had achieved, plenty of stuff that way, but also I had gotten burned out. I had developed some traits that were not serving me very well. In other words, sometimes I could show up like in an insensitive way. Um, I had, in a way, repressed or denied, like some vulnerabilities or some pain, and all of that. I didn't really know there was any other way until I experienced actually coaching sessions with you. And so for everybody here listening, I've known Alex now for what, 7 years or something, like a long time, okay? So over time, right? But immediately struck me that you were not doing that, that there was a quieting of the mind that I didn't have to push, push, push and analyze. And I could relax. And it was a little shocking for me because it's like I that the thing you're saying, emerging, the seeing things, the when we are reacting to our own like either insecurity or repressed stuff or pushing ourselves, we close our connection, our ability to open up that emerging of wisdom. Experiencing that completely changed my thinking around what helps people transform. It was very powerful, and I think a lot of the time when we still hear about coaching or people talk about coaching, I see a lot of emphasis on the thinking and the doing instead of the even when the I want to say, even when the emphasis on the being, to me, still seems like it comes from the thinking and the doing when I read about it or see people. Instead, I really like what I experienced working with you. It was this, no, I actually can relax, slow down, and rest. And paradoxically, things will start transform. And my ability to take action, it changes, is effective without the side effects that I was getting before. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, and I would actually also maybe use this as an opportunity to share a profound experience that I just had recently during one of our coaching sessions where you coached me. And let me just share this story because I think it was tremendously powerful, and it just happened like a week ago or so. And I think it's a great example of what can happen through the impact of transformative coaching in helping us to identify a deeply limiting patterns and to then transform it and let it go and receive healing, and as a result experience greater freedom and possibility. So for all your listeners, I'm originally from Germany, and I immigrated to the US in 1992. And it was quite challenging because I always had the feeling that I was abandoning my family. My entire family is still in Germany. I'm the only one here in the US. And I never really realized how traumatic of an experience that actually was for me. Right? I felt that the only way for me to move here, in part because I met my wife and soulmate, Melissa, I had to harm others. And that has stuck with me now for over 30 years, right? And as a result, a conditioned pattern, a conditioned pattern had formed that didn't allow me to show up authentically and truthfully whenever I was communicating with my family members, right? Because I always felt that if I explore and honor my own needs and wants, like when it comes to visiting them, spending time with them, being in a relationship with them, I always felt that I was not, it wasn't appropriate for me to do that because it felt like I was already harming them just by having moved here, right? So I always showed up from a place of deficit and lack. And so it did not allow me to ever show up authentically. And it also led to uh, communication that wasn't great. It wasn't really effective, right? Because when we don't show up authentically, like we hold back. Um, and we don't show up from our power. And so you, during that session, really helped me to see that. And what's really interesting is like at the beginning of our session, right? I never know where we will go. And at the end of our session, I'm always like so surprised over and over again, right? Because all these they just amazing insights show up. And so you helped me to see how for over 30 years I was trapped in this narrative, in this story about myself, right? That kept keeping me trapped in limiting behavior, limiting ways of communicating with my family, limiting beliefs. And then there was also that pattern that came online when I moved to the US that tried to protect me from harming my family members, which then also resulted in me not being able to show up fully authentically. And so you helped me really to see that. And that was such a tremendous shift. And I was, even though I've coached hundreds of people, I've had many, many coaching sessions and been doing the same kind of work with others, I was not able to see the patterns playing out in my own psychology. And as a result of your coaching and helping me see what was holding me back and helping me to find a way to let go of this pattern, I was able to completely shift. And immediately, my approach, my way of showing up with my family, the way I communicate has changed, right? I'm able to show up more authentically, more truthfully, more powerfully, and I'm able to thereby give much more of myself to my family members and to support our relationships in a much more powerful way. And that was just very powerful because so much comes from that. Even my partner was impacted by that. And I had a conversation with her, and we were unpacking some of the patterns that we were both caught up in for decades now. And so one session can help us to unravel like decades of limiting conditioning.
Hmm, that's so beautiful. Um, hmm. Wow, thank you for sharing that. I want to break something down if you don't mind for because sometimes, there can be a confusion about, oh, okay, so do you talk about the past in coaching, all of that, right? It's like, no, that's coaching is not about the past, but here's what sometimes happens. We were talking about some future decisions, some future things, right? And sometimes what we both learn to do is that as deep transformative coaches, we listen for people's thinking. And it's very difficult to hear your own thinking. Okay, that's why me too. I you wouldn't believe what I come, to Alex with. That's that for another call. Um, we're blind essentially to some of our thinking, especially the deep ones. So especially when you have a coach that you worked with over time and there's good rapport, sometimes spontaneously in the conversation, the coach will hear something and recognize it as thinking. And so the reason the work that, let's say, you do with a therapist of, talking, breaking it down or going into all these things, it is a very deep craft of opening up that space for the thinking to be seen and not instead be like a spell. I think that's the best I can explain it. I don't know if you would say differently. And that's why transformation happens, because when we wake up to our own thinking, a lot of the time it just disappears. It's like, I always share this with everybody. It's like you're caught up in a movie and then you remember it's just a movie. You don't have to be that scared. You don't have to react to the screen, right? Um, so it's a really powerful experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you brought up something really important, right? With which often can be misunderstood, right? Because we sometimes go into the past or as we identify limiting patterns that have been holding us back, but it's not the main focal point, right, of the process to stay in the past or keep us trapped in the past or keep us stuck in the past, right? Like what powerful coaching is about is to help us see where we are holding ourselves back from realizing our full potential, right? So a powerful coach can help us to see patterns that are limiting us, that have been preventing us from living into our true potential, because the coach holds the truth that we all have greatness and infinite potential inside of us, right? And so that's the point, right? Was as coaches were saying, like if you understand where you're limiting yourself and you can find a way to let go of those limiting patterns, you can step into your true potential. And a coach holds the truth of the potential and the greatness that we all have inside of us.
That's right. That's exactly, and I think you really are a master of that, of seeing the potential and helping people like come from that when they're creating, right? Come from a place of possibilities and creation. So I want to ask you my next question. Okay. Because actually it's a perfect segue, which is, I think when I worked as an employee, I really wish I had understood more about this power of coaching and I had invested more in it because I mean now I would never go without a coach. Like, but it's really a lot that you take on, especially when you're managing a team or leading an organization, a business, and so forth. So I am curious to hear from you about the difference coaching can make to leadership, and how do you see it as fundamental to the success and well-being of an organization?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey because I've been coaching a number of leaders, and also from the understanding of my own experiences of being in leadership positions. And I've also found coaching incredibly transformative for leaders. And I wish that I would have had access to coaching when I was serving as a leader in the past. So I would say a couple of things where coaching can be really helpful for leaders. So one of the first thing is that being in a leadership position is can be tremendously challenging, right? Because we have a lot of responsibility. We have a lot of responsibility, and we're often in a high pressure, high stress environment. And from that place, we often react, right? So we never really have the space to step back and to calm our thinking down, right? And to kind of tune into our feeling, our inner sense of wisdom. And coaching can help leaders to connect to their true power and wisdom, right? Which they don't really um, do when they're constantly trapped in an environment of having to react and having to put out fires every day. And in that sense, coaching can really help the leader to show up as their best self, right? And to create structures, to create practices, to create ways of showing up that allows them to summon their best selves, right? Because when we're not showing up as our best self as leaders, when we're showing up from scarcity, from defensiveness, from lack, from a problem-oriented perspective, we impact the people we lead, whether it's our team or the employees that work for us. And it impacts the morale, it impacts productivity, and it impacts the impact our organization and our business wants to have. And so in that regard, like leaders are very influential, which they often don't know. And so making sure that I, as a leader, can take care of my own well-being will inevitably translate into the well-being of the people I lead and the organization or the business I serve.
Yeah, I think one of the things also is that it's lonely at the top, right?
Yeah.
So to have some support of somebody that is there to is in your corner, but also can give it to you straight a little bit if you need to hear, right? Or if you need to be questioned in a safe space, um, can also be very helpful.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges I found for leaders because the experience is so different as a leader compared to working in a position of an employee. And it can feel isolating. right? It can people feel misunderstood, and then as a result, it impacts the relationship leaders have with their employees. And coaching can really help to bridge those gaps and to help a leader to develop healthy relationships with their employees. Yeah, and I also think, right, so I think that relates to coaching being able to help leaders to see to have clarity about what's most important to the organization or the company that they serve, right? Because when we're in a constant state of putting out fires and stress and being reactive, right, we're essentially in survival mode. We're in fight or flight. And when we're in fight or flight, right, we tend to just worry about our own survival, right, our own well-being. But as a leader, right, I have the responsibility to take care of the well-being of, the people I lead, the customers, the clients, the communities I serve. And that requires me to step back into a space of bigness, expansiveness, where I can trust, where I can connect to my own inner wisdom and notice its guidance, right? Where I can notice when conditioning or conditioned fear pattern comes up, or I feel triggered versus, okay, it's time for me to step into my bigness as a leader, right? So that I can serve the greater purpose that I've signed up for. And that requires a lot of presence, a lot of awareness, and a lot of clarity. And that's hard to do without support. And coaching can be just a very powerful resource to provide that level of support to leaders.
Yeah, I actually want to make a comment and also ask you a question. Because you're saying so many important things. One of the things that struck me that you just brought up is that leaders feel misunderstood and how there's a gap between the experience of somebody in a position of leadership from the inside and a lot of the time what other people perceive, right? And uh, this might be a little bit my experience, I don't know, but I feel like when you step into leadership, a lot of, you might have imposter syndrome, you have a lot of this thing, what are people thinking of me or whatever, right? You have all these thoughts from, like, let's say your small self, right?
Mhm.
But everybody else, of course, is actually thinking of all the power you have and all the things you do, right? So that right there is like, unless it's addressed and sort of you understand it, let's say that it can create some not so great not so great communication. Um, but the other thing is that I think as leaders, people really underestimate how much, even just like innocently, people who are direct reports will start picking up how to do things even when they're not directly told. Do you see that? So the more, like, it's almost like the more responsibilities you have, the more aware you need to be, because that will influence people much more than from the bottom up. I don't know if you've seen this, so what's
Mhm.
what's your take on it?
Yeah, no, it's a great observation. Yeah, I noticed that in my own experience in leadership, as a leadership, being in several having served in several leadership positions, that we do have a lot of influence, and that we have a lot of essentially power, not just from a hierarchical perspective, but also from the way we're showing up. Right. So because people are looking at me as a leader for guidance, for direction, they're also looking to me as a role model, right? Because I believe good leaders help others to realize their own leadership potential. And often, like, so to give you an example, like I was very committed to maintaining a healthy work environment, a healthy culture at the organizations that I was leading. And I would keep telling my staff members, my team members, to take time off or to engage in self-care practices. But I wasn't doing it myself. And it took me some time to really notice that even though I was telling people, encouraging, empowering people to take care of their own needs, they wouldn't do it because they didn't see me do it. They didn't see me model it. And I had to really learn that it's not about what I tell people, it's really about how I show up,
Mm.
right? The feeling, the energy, like the commitment, the intentions that I bring into spaces, into conversations. And that's why I think it's so important to be present, to be intentional before I go into a one-on-one conversation or into a meeting, right? To take the time to calm down, to presence myself, and to be clear about the energy that I want to bring into a conversation, the energy I want to bring into a room, and what are the intentions that I want to show up from. And that allows me to be less reactive and be less transactional, but to really show up from a place of power, of values, and from a place of transmitting positive values and practices that others can start to emulate to foster their own development as leaders, but also to protect their own well-being.
Yeah, and you can't fake that. That's where deep coaching comes in. That's what transformative. You have to literally transform the way you see yourself from the inside out. You can't be like, okay, well, this is how you behave as a powerful leader, right? People have an ability of seeing through that stuff, consciously or unconsciously. Some will consciously notice, but even the ones that wouldn't consciously know, they pick up on some inauthenticity. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very
yeah,
powerful.
yeah,
So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, because you actually mentioned it, is this idea of like a wider purpose, a higher purpose, or leaving a legacy. Because I know this is like a big passion of yours, and you work a lot with your clients on this. So I was wondering if you want to say a little bit about that importance for leaders to really have what is their purpose? What is their vision? What kind of legacy do they want to leave?
yeah. No, it's a really important, powerful question. I think that that's important to cultivate as a leader on a daily basis, right? And I think it speaks to the idea that an importance that we have to show up for what we believe, for our values, for the vision, for the greater purpose we're serving on a daily basis, right? Because often, organizations or companies, they have mission statements that sound very powerful and inspiring, but they're not really practiced, they're not really embodied, right? Because on a deeper level, we carry these deeply limiting conditioned patterns that come out in ways of how we interact with each other, how we interact with our clients, our customers, our constituents. And it's important to understand those dynamics um, of how, like, the deep condition that we all carry within ourselves is being expressed through our actions and our communication. And when we're not connected to our deeper sense of purpose or the greater purpose, the cause that we're serving through our work, the conditioning or the ego, the conditioned mind keeps trying to control our thinking, the way we're showing up from a place of fear, from a place of deficit. We're reactive. Where someone says something that triggers us or that makes us feel inadequate, or we feel like we're not a good leader, we're not good enough, right? And then all of our insecurities get triggered, and we show up from this place, and we show up from a place of needing to prove that we're a good leader. And that's inevitably means that we're showing up from a place of deficit. But if we can connect to our sense of purpose, then even during the most challenging conflicts, we can always look to what is it that we're about? What are we serving? What are our values? Right? And when we place any conflict or any goal that we're working towards as a team in the context of the greater vision and the purpose we're serving, we can see that it's not just about us, right? It's not just about me needing to position myself as a professional, as a leader, right? Or within the context of the organization, right? And so it allows me to transcend the ego or the conditioning of the thinking mind and to surrender to something much higher. And that can really help us to transform any type of tension or conflict or limiting patterns, because the power of a purpose, of a shared purpose and vision and values is so transformative, but it does require daily action, a daily commitment to serving that purpose.
It's like going to the gym, you gotta build the muscles.
That's right.
Yeah. I was also thinking, it's great that you brought up the me thinking, because as I always say to people, when I start getting insecure, I can tell because my me thinking increases. Am I good enough? Was I too rude? Did I look bad? Oh no, could I make that? Maybe I'm not, good, maybe I need to study more, whatever. It's like all about me, instead of like the perfect antidote is like, no, forget about you. What are you up to? Right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I love that.
that's
That's perfect. I think
right.
that's beautifully said.
That's what you do. I feel like that's really what I see you do. At least with me. I don't know other people you work with, but I imagine I'm not the only one here, that I come with a lot of me, poor me, maybe this, I can't. And somehow you bring me back to, no, like that's, that's a small self. That's like, we all
Yeah.
have some of that stuff made up, it's all made up. And the purpose or the bigger vision, I feel like that makes the impossible possible very often. That's
Yeah.
really what
Yeah.
I
And I
see.
love that. Yeah. And I would also add that that's something that, you also help me to really see and embody on a deeper level through your coaching, which is that it doesn't have to be a big deal. It happens, right? We get in our own way, right? We do have insecurities, and that's just part of being human, right? And if we can just accept that and also love that, right? That's just part of who we are, right? And we can then, as leaders, embrace authenticity and vulnerability, right? And being able to say, yeah, I haven't figured it all out, or I have, right? Going back to your point of modeling healthy behavior, powerful ways of showing up. I think, in my experience, some of the most powerful and influential leaders are able to be vulnerable, are able to own up to their mistakes, are able to name their insecurities and share when those are triggered, right? And not try to avoid or prevent or pretend that it's not happening, right? Because, like you said before, Aurora, like, people will see through inauthenticity, right? If we're trying to hide, if we're trying to appear as someone we're not, we break trust, right? And we diminish our ability to be influential as transformative leaders. And so I think that's a really important point of powerful leadership, or important part, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, right? And to model vulnerability, right? And to not shame it, to not judge it, to not think that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just like part of the human experience. But if we judge it, or we think like we can allow that to be part of our shared experience, then it usually comes out in unhealthy ways because it's just part of who we are, right? And so by accepting and loving it and giving it space, it can be embraced and become part of our shared human experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Hmm. Which brings me to the next question, which I want to premise with I think the constant conversation, social media focus on what's wrong, what we need to fix, how bad we are, even in the guise of self-improvement, is so counter to being able to be in this space. So there's really a paradox that when the more we can accept ourselves and be in a state of gratitude, the more paradoxically we can change things, whether it is, transform ourselves or transform the world if we're up to make big changes in the world, right? So I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, which also I think is I don't know. I think to me, and maybe that's what happens to come through in my social media or reading, but I feel like it's not as present. It seems to me that again, there's a lot of that self-improvement, here's how to get better, which comes from a state of deficit. Actually, I like when you said that state of deficit, right? Or there is this sort of like everything is good and everything, which is not what we're talking about. So can you say a little bit about the conditions that bring about change that are very
Yeah.
counterintuitive or counter what we're taught?
Yeah, no, it's a powerful question. Yeah, social media just such a powerful force of influence, of continuously reconditioning ourselves. And so what I would say here is that we are all very powerful creators, and we often don't know it,
Mm.
right? And we allow the impact of forces such as social media or other forms of media or our conditioning to or even our embodied pain to make decisions for us on our behalf, right? And if we don't know that, then we're reacting, right, to the messages that we keep receiving from the world around us, or in particular social media, which you're absolutely right. It's telling us we're not good enough, we need to improve, we need to compare ourselves to other people. And it keeps reinforcing this deeper belief that there's something wrong with us. There's something that needs to be fixed, right? And when we show up from this place of lack, of deficit, of we're not enough, we're not deserving, we're not worthy, we inevitably project that energy through our actions, through our decisions, and the ways we show up in the world. And I think that's why it's so important to be aware that we are powerful creators, that we can either create from a place of vision, clarity, intention, or we create through our conditioning or through the influence of the outside world, which makes us essentially creators who create by default. Because everything we process, everything we interpret about what's going on around us or what's going on with us programs us, it conditions us. And if we accept the limiting messages that we keep receiving and we allow them to be integrated into our belief system, into our psychology, it shapes our personality, our character traits, how we show up, what we believe is possible for us. And it's really important to understand the deep impact of those kind of messages and to be deliberate about not allowing those limiting messages to come through and to accept them as truth, and that's again why I believe coaching can be really helpful to create space where we can examine what's truly important to us. Who do we want to be? What are our values? What does it look like to embody our values, to show up as our most powerful selves? Like, what's our true potential? And what does it look like to show up from our potential, from a place of abundance, of possibility, from a place of our strength, right? It takes daily practice because we spend so much time on social media and there's so much conditioning, so much messaging coming towards us. So it really, in my experience, requires a deliberate effort, right? And a discipline, focus, and practice, and creating supportive environmental conditions, right, to protect ourselves from those influences so that we can keep showing up as deliberate creators instead of creating by default from a place of defensiveness, reactiveness, and lack and unworthiness.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that really come to mind as you're saying that. One is that if you're like the moment you set out to lead, you don't have to worry. That conditioning will start surfacing, right? And I laugh because you might as well have some humor about it, sense of humor about it. And so that's a thing why I think it's so important to have deep coaching, because whether you step up in a position of leadership and leading others, or it's your own business, let's say it's a solopreneur, you can be sure that it will poke into those places. And I think I like what you're saying, focusing on what's important, focusing on what matters, focusing on what are you up to building, because again, you have to keep your eyes on the ball. That's where that's where attention needs to be, and then build the awareness when all those things get poked that, okay, I'm gonna tend to that. I'm not gonna pretend it's not there, start reacting to it, you know what I mean? Or get completely mesmerized by working on whatever I think I'm lacking, and then next thing I know, I forgot what I was building, right? It's just like so, it sounds so simple, but when you're in the middle, like we both know, when you're in the middle of it, that stuff just wants to get your attention, right?
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah. And you're really powerful and effective as a coach. Um, yeah, having helped me to see my own conditioning and the limiting stories I was caught up in, right? And you as a coach, right, have really has really helped me to give myself permission, right, to ask that question, what's important to me, right? And I remember many uh moments where you asked me, like, okay, like, let's take a step back, like, what's really important. And it's hard to do, right? Because the conditioning is so deep. Like, immediately
That's right.
I feel emotional right now, right? Because it's bringing me back to those moments, right? And you notice, wow, this is really deep. And I feel like, am I allowed to do this, right? Can I honor my true needs and desires, right? Because it feels uncomfortable because it's conditioning, right? That's why it's so powerful, because it prevents us from asking those deeper questions and giving ourselves permission, because the conditioning essentially is saying it's not safe, right? That's what it's there for. It's there to protect us. So if we on a deeper level feel that it's not safe to get clear about what's truly important to us, we'll never allow ourselves to explore that. And if we don't explore it, we're not going to take the steps to create the things that are important to us, right? Because it doesn't feel safe. So I think very powerful and transformative coaching, which I think you powerfully embody as a coach, is to help people to see that it's safe to be truthful, to be authentic, to give ourselves permission to explore our deeper desires and what's important to us, And it takes practice, right? We have to take small steps to learn that it's safe to not be driven by conditioning, right? But to show up as deliberate creators, like from a place of power, from a place of authenticity, right? So that we can recondition ourselves and say, okay, whoa, this is actually because we have a lot of thinking about it, right? Because the thinking, the conditioned thought pattern, they make us feel fearful. And then my body, like when you asked me, Alex, what is it that you really want on a deeper level? I get triggered. I feel that my body does feel there's a lot of uncomfortable sensation, right? And so then the question is, do I believe that this physical sensation is giving me wisdom or telling me the truth? Or is it just trying to protect me to step outside of my comfort zone, right? And coaching can really help someone to see, okay, the fear pattern that just got triggered, right? It's just there to protect you, right? It doesn't hold any wisdom, right? It's not keeping you really safe, right? And it's okay to be with that feeling of discomfort. That's part of the process of growing and expanding into the true potential we are. And that's available to us.
That's so beautiful. And, I feel like I've learned it from you. I would say so. It's so like, but, it's also making me really think how, and this is okay. This is for the coaches listening to this, really, which is like, there is no shortcut to being a coach. Like you can't go to the 6-month course and learn the framework and the structure and what to ask, and you're a coach. Like you can start that way, we all start somewhere. But I feel like that, maybe unintentionally, what Alex and I are sharing is that we have to keep working on it on ourselves. And the more we work on it on ourselves with another coach, because you can't do it by yourself, like you need another person. Even if this is something you do with clients, you still can't, you're blind to your own thing. But then it's an ever deepening exploration of yourself and understanding. And I think I can speak for both of us on this. Like the more I go deep and understand myself, the better I become as a coach, the more effective I am. Right? Because once I see for myself, my ability to see increases. And I think you would agree with me on this. It's really,
Yeah.
there's no way to get around this. There's really no way to get around this. And the good news and bad news for some people, I don't know, but I feel it's good news, is that it never ends. Like you'll never get to the bottom of, okay, now I'm never insecure anymore, and now everything is fine, and now I've understood myself completely. I don't think that exists.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think that's really important for, people to understand who are coaches, who want to be coaches or who want to explore coaching for themselves, that this is a long game, right? And I agree, it's an amazing journey, right? But it's not about getting to the end, right? We certainly get to many milestones, right? Of growth, of expansion, of achievement. But the source of true happiness is not in those achievements, in those milestones. And I
Mm.
think that's what I hear you say in what you're sharing, right? Because we are so conditioned to believe that when I get to this place, when I get this job, or when I get that salary, right, I will have finally made it. And that implies that we believe that the source of what we're looking for is outside of us. It's in a certain achievement or an acquisition of something material. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with, getting a new job, getting a higher salary, right? But I think it's important to understand that these goals and desires are not there to bring us true happiness. And I've seen this a lot in my own work, Because if we believe that we need those things to be happy, we'll never find true happiness. And I believe that coaching can help us to discover our own inner innate happiness and well-being, right? And to learn to create from that place of joy and possibility, right? Because we are creators. And that allows us to create from a place of possibility and abundance instead of fear and deficit. And to me, that's a very important distinction, right? To learn that the source of what we're looking for is inside of us, not outside of us. And coaching can really help us. And you've done this so many times with me to help us connect to the feeling. Because in the end, like everything we want is because we believe that we feel better, right? That it will bring us happiness, right? And coaching can help us to find that feeling, the presence of that feeling right now, right? So that we no longer have to chase, right? The feeling that we're going for, the feeling of feeling happy, contentment, peace, right? That it's already there, it's present, it's available to us. We can have it. And using coaching to help us find that feeling, locate that feeling, and learn how to keep coming back to that feeling over and over again allows us to experience an amazing life of happiness, of fulfillment. And that doesn't mean we don't experience grief or loss or pain, but we're able to hold those experiences from a place of love and acceptance and not from a place of resistance and judgment. And that in of itself transforms the feeling, right? So we don't have to keep pushing against discomfort, right? Or try to avoid it, but we can actually know that we have the capacity to hold all the feelings that are available to us, and that there's a lot of richness in having those experiences. And it just allows us to just expand our whole experience of life in ways that I can't even put in words.
Yeah, I think yeah. That's I think that's beautiful you brought that up because that's another one of the paradoxes. If we chase our goal, if we go work with a coach thinking that we have to get whatever it's in our head and otherwise we're not gonna be happy, it makes me think it's a little bit like dating. If you go on a first date and you're like, this has to be the person I'm gonna end up for the rest of my life, like, yeah, that's not gonna go very well. Right? But when you know that the source of, when you really get to that source that you're talking about, you can play any game you want and go after anything you want, having a good time, you know, which will make it more likely to happen. It's never
Mhm.
guaranteed, but right, at
Yeah.
least you
Yeah,
have your,
that's
yeah.
yeah, that's been my experience, right? Helping people to find that feeling in themselves so that they can, because then they go on a date and they feel relaxed. They can be detached. They can be their charming and authentic selves. And that has much more attractive power than showing up from a place of fear and deficit. And I've seen seeming miracles through that approach. I think it's very powerful. In my experience, you're absolutely right. Once we find that place inside of us, we are showing up, we're being the source. And when we can see that we are the source of what we're looking for, right, then usually the world around us starts to shift and change and come more and more into alignment with how we feel on the inside.
Yeah. So I want to ask you another question about leadership, which is really the question about managing others and dealing with that kind of dynamic. Is there Are there a couple of things that you teach or work with your clients that you think are pretty common things that need to be explored with leaders, really on these people dynamics?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it relates to some of the things we've been exploring, right? Which is that the source of being okay of our well-being is within us, right? And that can be challenging to see, like when we're in an environment and in a high pressure environment, and we feel insecurities being triggered, we feel like we need to be perform at a certain level, or we feel judged by the people that we work with. And when we then allow the conditioning that got triggered to dictate our actions and how we react, like we feel that we have to defend ourselves, right? That we have to prove something, or we believe that the other person that behaved in a way that made us feel heard has to change their behavior, right? And so as a result, we then tend to be caught up in a dynamic of where we're trying to control each other. We're trying to control, and I feel like that applies to all relationships, right? If we believe that the well-being is in the way someone else acts towards us, and I'm not saying that if there is inappropriate behavior or there's harmful behavior, um, that it's we should just accept that or tolerate that. But the invitation is to see the necessity to look inwardly first, right? And I think again, coaching can really help us to navigate conflicts at work, right? It can help us to see what's really going on from this broader perspective, right? And from wisdom and understanding how conditioning plays out, right? Because when we're showing up from a place of conditioning and fear, we can only see through those lenses. Like we cannot show up from a place of wisdom and possibility. But if we can allow ourselves to step first into our own well-being, our own sense of safety, but also our understanding that we have the ability to take care of ourselves without needing to control others, which usually is not really on offer anyways, then we can find solutions, ideas to respond or to show up in a relationship, including conflicts that can lead to outcomes that serve everyone involved.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Um, hmm. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today? I feel like we're having such a rich conversation. Anything else that maybe we haven't touched on that you would really share on these
Yeah.
topics?
Yeah, I'd share that, like what you talk about a lot, and which I think is so powerful and important, which is that we all carry our own inner wisdom,
Mm.
right? And that's one of the main reasons why coaching is so powerful, because it can help us to know when triggered fear patterns dominate our way of perceiving, understanding, experiencing things, and when our wisdom shows up to guide us and lead us. And that can be challenging because we're so conditioned to believe that, fear-driven behavior is keeping us safe, right? But in my experience, it prevents us from really accessing our inner deeper wisdom. And it can be hard to distinguish the difference between like the voice of fear or the voice of wisdom. And I just invite everyone to open themselves up to the truth that we all have that inner wisdom that's leading us towards greater well-being and towards the fulfillment of our desires. And it takes space to get into a calm state of mind to receive the guidance of our wisdom, which again, coaching can really help us with. And we notice it in the feeling, right? But often we're so conditioned to not trust in our feelings, right? Or we're conditioned to needing to respond, to react, to defend ourselves, right? And I've seen this a lot with people in my work, that we've often then lost the ability to really trust what feels good on a deeper level. And I think in part this conversation is about reconditioning ourselves and learning to reconnect with what's always been present, right? But what's been covered up with so many layers of conditioning, what's continuing to be covered with conditioning because of all the messaging, the social media, all the noise that's impacting us on a daily basis. And it really requires us to keep coming back to a place of calmness, settledness, a place of presence, of a place of awareness, right? To notice what's here right now and where our wisdom is, and what feels truly good to us. Because we know, like, if we can learn to listen to our deeper wisdom, like as in particular as leaders or in any profession or any situation we might find ourselves in, we can always be guided to knowing what to do, what steps to take. Our wisdom always leads us to new ideas, insights, solutions, answers to questions that we might be struggling with. And I really want to, encourage everyone to keep looking there, to keep getting support and engaging in these kinds of conversations, right? From a place of calmness and spaciousness and possibility, knowing that our wisdom is always there to support us. And it's just such an amazing gift that we often are not aware of, and it's always there. And I really wish for everyone to become aware of the presence of their own wisdom, and to learn to listen to its guidance, and to learn to trust in its guidance, because it's been a tremendous experience to be on this journey, and to be on this journey with you and having these conversations, these explorations. It's incredible how deep it goes and how infinite uh, these explorations are. And yeah, I really wish that for everyone, because it's just beautiful and unconditionally loving.
Um, okay, one last thing. If you can share something, I know, we all have to keep things confidential with our clients. I know you work with a lot of people, so what are some results people have achieved? Because I think when, people listening to this conversation, it might not really sound, we're so used to go, 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 do, that's how you achieve that. I think sometimes when I talk a lot about this, I have the impression that people that don't understand, no, 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 but my clients do get results. It's just they don't get it that way. What are some, like getting jobs, getting
Mhm.
raises, growing what are some of the things that you can just mention vague enough for that, you don't break any
Mhm.
confidentiality?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so there's one person that comes immediately to mind who I've worked with, who's a great example of a leader, um, who has been able to move into the highest leadership position they've ever been in. And they've more than doubled their salary, and they're able to show up, right, from a place of possibilities, from a place of vision, from a place of values. And they're able to create a supportive work environment for themselves and the people that they work with. They're able to create a healthy organizational culture, and they're able to implement like all the pieces that you and I just spoke of, right? When it comes to doing our work from a place of possibility and abundance and well-being, creating thriving relationships by understanding how we often hold ourselves back from creating truly thriving relationships, right? And integrating that into our organizational culture and a shared language around these concepts that you and I just spoke about. And those changes happen from the inside out. Like it's a reflection of everything you and I just talked about, helping them to see where they were holding themselves back, limiting conditioning, limiting stories about themselves, being caught up in fear-driven protective patterns, right? And really helping them to not only become aware of those patterns, but also how to release them, let them go, creating space for deep visioning to explore what was truly important to them, right? Without any restriction, what would be the ideal experience of having work that's impactful and that's rooted in their values and their vision for the world that they wanted to create as a leader, and the space that they wanted to create for others and for the partners that they work with outside of the organization that they're leading. And we worked on not only creating those internal transformations, but also on embodying those. So that's an important piece where coaching can really help us to practice on a daily basis, right? Because we're talking about a process of deep transformation and reconditioning, right? But once we can see that it's safe to show up from our place of true power and authenticity, and we start to collect evidence that showing up from a place of power and authenticity is actually allowing us to create the changes we want. We start to see new opportunities that weren't there. Like nothing really changed in the environment when it comes to environmental condition, but all of a sudden, new opportunities, new conversations, new awarenesses come into play that they weren't aware of before. And so many things kept falling into place. And we also worked on learning to live from a place of vision, which I think is another really important part of the process of transformation, right? So that when we have identified a clear vision and what we want, what's important to us, to make sure that we not stay in the gap between where we're at right now and the vision, what we're looking to create, but that we start living from our vision, which means that we look for opportunities every day to implement a piece of our vision. And before we know it, our life has transformed, right? And we living the vision that we created not too long ago. And that's precisely what happened with this person. And we continue to work it, like you said, it's an ongoing process, it's a long game. But it's incredible and it's so inspiring to be able to witness these types of transformation.
Mm. All right, I want to start wrapping it up. And if people want to work with you, how do you work with people? Meaning, like, you coach leaders, you also coach career changers, you host workshops. Can you tell us a little bit, like, all the ways people can work with you and how they can reach out to you?
Yeah. 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 So I work with individuals, entrepreneurs, visionaries, to help them create what they want to create. And that can include careers, a new business, a new organization. That could also include a new relationship, thriving relationships in their work, in their romantic life. Um, but essentially, I work with people who are committed to creating a big impact. And I also work with organizations, mostly nonprofits. I work with their leaders and their staff members and provide coaching for them. And it's really about, yeah, legacy, right? Like helping people to explore their true potential. Like who do they want to be? Like, what do they want to create? How do they want to show up as leaders, as visionary um, in the world? Like, what's the gift they want to leave behind? And what does it look like to, yeah, create a life and a career that's rooted in abundance and possibility and impact? And I offer free breakthrough sessions, so people can just go to my website and sign up for a, yeah, session that's like a regular coaching session to explore what it's like to coach, get coaching.
Which I can tell everybody is great. Okay. And they can find you at, will you say your website? And I will also have it
Yes.
written in the notes.
Yeah, it's at alexpoeter.com. That's ALEXPOETER.com.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. It's been such a pleasure having you here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aurora. It's been an amazing experience. I really, yeah, appreciate
And
it a lot.
everybody, you can find me at repurposeyourpurpose.com. I work with career changers, business owners, and leaders who want to really do work they love and enjoy. I'm industry agnostic, so my work doesn't depend on the industry because it's all about your inner wisdom to emerge. So have a wonderful day, and I'll see you at the next episode.